knowing where the safe havens are. So if you want to know where the safe haven here is, it's at the forecourt. But to get to the forecourt, we have on either side of the room, to your left, my left, you would find in the rear, there are signs indicating emergency routes, access to exit the place. They are also they serve as access to the restrooms. In the event of any emergency, please, we are encouraged to be patient and file out in an orderly manner as engineers would. Ideally, those from the rear go, and then those of us big at the front would proceed much later because we can bear all the risk that comes with the event. So on that light note and a quick prayer by myself, we begin. So God Almighty, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for the opportunity to deliberate over national issues of significant importance. We ask that you come and be in our midst and guide and direct our affairs. Amen. I'm used to saying thank you, so I won't say thank you. So I would, if the executive director is around, I would invite him to please give us, would you? Oh, okay, the president, sorry. My apologies. So our president, indefatigable KGB, will welcome us.
Thank you very much. Well, first and foremost, we would like to thank you all for coming, and more especially the whole Chief Executive of the Volta River Authority, Engineer Dakwa, Deputy Chief Executive Kenzo, and I've forgotten the name, but then, and the Ken Arthur, but then they've been using a particular name on one of the platforms, but we will not. You see, that's what happens. Those are the names that readily come to mind. Yes, then we have our Executive Director who has graciously helped to organize this meeting, our past presidents, and I am happy to have my mentors here because they started it all, at least so far as I am concerned. I know some people may have come before them. And of course, he has other caps. He is now the chairman for the Engineering Council of Ghana. And the engineering, again, VRA is doing so much. Oh, I've forgotten my president-elect. President-elect, I can see that you are also here. But then, very importantly, VRA has given us magnanimously the Executive Secretary of the Engineering Council. We acknowledge, Registrar, oh, okay, a Registrar of the Executive. Well, you know, we have all heard and probably seen, and some others have witnessed the devastation that has been caused by the controlled spillage of the Akosombo hydroelectric dam on the lower basin of the Volta. But then, for me, before September, I traveled to Bolga on GhIE duties, and I realized that a lot of flooding was already on at the upstream. So the question that I was asking was that, so if you don't open, it means that there'll be probably more flooding on the upstream. If you open, there'll be downstream flooding. Well, we all know that there was controlled spillage, and that has caused a lot of havoc, and that is why we are even here today. However, there have been a number of views that have been expressed and shared widely, especially on social media. And today, I went to Ghana Highway Authority, and I was telling them that, please, I want you to be here. I don't know whether they are here. And they were saying that they have a particular platform, and the kind of jokes that are being shared, you know, some of them are serious. Said you flooded them so that all their voting cards will be swept away, so that during the next election, they will not have the voter ID cards to vote. But I don't think that we will do that. I don't think so. Unfortunately, and as always in Ghana, you have dam experts. Overnight, they have sprung like mushrooms all over the place and purporting to know even more than our engineers who have managed this dam for over, well, I guess that's 60 years. 60 years. So between them and Ghana Water Limited, they managed all the dams in this country, and we've not had any challenge. I once visited, I've forgotten the state in the US, where there was a dam break. And, you know, the whole width of wherever the water that was flowing was cleared. I've seen it. And we also heard what happened in Libya only a few months ago. I don't know whether that is what we're looking for. But anyway, political actors also have taken up the stage and for whatever parochial or self-interest, and they are using this incident to promote their own agenda. And we've heard a lot. However, as engineers, we must speak and act in accordance with established engineering principles, data, facts, and not to join the bandwagon of playing to the gallery. Unfortunately, some of us have engaged on some of our platforms, and I have not taken kindly to it, because I don't believe that we should just say things that we do not know or even understand. The best thing to do is to ask questions. That is what we do. And it's even unethical. It is unethical. I always say that it is unethical not to know and purport to know, and therefore say and act in a manner which would cause all right-thinking people to think that you know. Yes, I concede that within the definition of engineering, there is common sense. I hope you know that after all the mathematical, the science, the technology, there's an element of common sense, and I believe that is what a lot of people are using. However, I believe, I was going to say I suspect, but I believe it, that there are certain senses which may seem common, but may not be common to some people. Today I'm speaking philosophically. It is in this light that we reached out to the Volta River Authority to come and shed light as part of our engagement with public institutions and also other stakeholders in what we call dialogue. We've already had one dialogue, and we'll continue to dialogue with public institutions to learn and to ask questions. I think that's the way by which we become knowledgeable, and then we can speak based on facts. Today, we are happy to have a conversation with VRA and to ask pertinent questions. And these are some of the questions. You see, sometimes when questions are asked, they may seem, that it is almost stupid or straight away. But then the question that we'll have, and these are things that I've read, they said, did they have an emergency response plan? Did they have stakeholder engagement before the spillage? Could they have spilled or started spilling much earlier? And if they had done so, would it have changed the level of flooding? I don't know. Did they know the flood risk potential of areas within their basin and were the people aware? What would have happened if the dam had been overtopped? Why can't we automate the opening and the closing of the spillways or the sluice gates? These and many questions are what I believe you will be answering, and I therefore look forward to a bare-knuckle, frank engagement this evening. But you know the bare-knuckle. The bare-knuckles, no gloves. As an institution, we have set up an appeal for funds to bring initial relief to some of the affected persons. And we have already, in our own small way, gone to the, I don't know what we call them, are they villages or their towns? Mepe and Bato, their towns, okay. Mepe and Bato, with the Ghana Institute of Architects and then the Planets. We have been there and we have given our widows mite. In what I call the relief, we are going to go back and help them with other activities. And I would want to urge all of us to support this initiative. See, I'm adding my own initiative to. So after you've heard everything, please, the Momo number should be put up, or the account number, so that you pay into that relief fund. On this note, I would like to welcome you to the Engineering Center, and we look forward to an engaging evening. Thank you.
Please, after the president speaks, we clap louder. So, all right, thank you very much, Engineer President, for this very enlightening opening remarks. And to reiterate, it's going to be bare knuckle. What did you say? Okay, so we should strip off the gloves and have a frank discussion. Yes. So I have the privilege of inviting the Chief Executive of Ghana, of the Volta River Authority, to give us some. Yes, I deal a lot more with the Ghana Highway Authority, so I was going to say Ghana Highway Authority. Of the Volta River Authority to please share his, give us a brief overview.
Okay, thank you. Do they work? Okay, that's good. Good evening. Energy level is a little low. Is it because of the spillage? You are not victims yet. So, good evening once again. It's good to be here. Thanks very much to the institution for all the arrangements that you've put in place for us to hold this particular engagement. I'd have liked to have this engagement, let's say, last week. But unfortunately, we couldn't have it. But David, thanks a lot. I think that better late than never, as they say. Let's start by saying that really, we empathize with those who have found themselves in the situation that I would say they find themselves in at this point in time. The people of Mepe, Northern, Southern, etc. They are part of us. There's so many employees from those areas who work with us. In fact, some of our plant managers, key members of our staff, come from Mepe. So really, when something happens to the people of Mepe, it's just like happening to us. And so in terms of empathy, there's no more than I can say. We really empathize with them. I've had the opportunity to go to almost all the safe havens, or the holding areas, as some people like to call them. And really, to move from your house and be relocated, however short it is, it's still traumatic. So we can understand the public outcry, we can understand how people feel. But there's always a balance for a dam manager. There's something you have to juggle between maintaining the integrity of the dam and then the consequences of what you do when you protect the dam. And we did everything that we could. We took all the good engineering decisions to ensure that that balance continued to stay. So let me summarize by saying that empathy comes from both our board, myself as a professional, and my colleagues, that we will never leave them alone. And I've been there on several occasions. I've always told them that we will make sure that they go back to their old lives. That's something that we will do. And so the other thing I've always said was that we will never leave you alone. People think I'm a Liverpool supporter. You will never be alone. And I think I really mean it. We will put all our resources together, whatever we have to do to get people back to where they were before, we will do that. And we are making that commitment. Of course, we'll be working with government, but for us, for the 60 years of operations that we've had, we have to use the resources to deal with this issue. It doesn't matter what has happened. We have to help the people. So that's what we will do. But spilling, let me start by saying, spilling is not something that we take, it's something that we take seriously. Let me be more positive. It's something that we really take very seriously. It's not something that we do on a regular basis. The last time we had a spill was in 2010, 13 years ago. Before then, it was 1991, 32 years ago. Before then, it was 74, then 71, then 68, and the 69 floods. Those who are old enough will know that those years were very, very wet years. So it's something that we don't do quite often. But in line with industry practice and as a prudent utility, we've always known that we will spill one day because you don't control the weather. Rainfall is a natural event. You will never know when you have the rains that you don't expect. So right after the last spill in 2010, we decided that we'll have what we call an emergency preparedness plan. And that's nothing but a protocol that determines what happens in case there's a spill. There's an EPP. If you go to other places, there's an EPP for fire, there's an EPP for snow, etc. But ours, because the looming danger will always be through a spill, that's what we did, like all hydro utilities do. And since 2010, we've been holding workshops with all the major actors involved in the emergency preparedness plan. Let me just summarize by saying that the emergency preparedness plan has several actors. The lead agency is NADMO because it deals with disaster, and NADMO is the statutory state institution for disaster management. VRA, our role is to indicate whether there's a spill or there's no spill, and what levels of spill we'll have or for what length of time. But then the major actors, in addition to ourselves and NADMO, are the DCs, because that's where government machinery is. Then the important people in the community, how do you call it? The assemblyman is one. The police commander, for security reasons. Fire service, whether there's fire. Ambulance service, health matters. So everybody that you can imagine is part of this whole emergency preparedness plan. And everybody knows the role that he has to play. Who has to go to a radio station to announce, who has to beat the gong gong, what's to be the process for disseminating information. But in order that people don't forget, because we don't know when, we've always known that there will be a spill one day, but we've never been able to tell when. And because it's few and far between, people may forget. So what we instituted was that every year we'll bring all these hundreds of people together in all the communities who will be impacted by the spill, put them all together, have a workshop, and then we go through the process of what to do if this should happen. We've been doing that for more than 10 years. Last year we did it. So if you recall, last year, and one of the reasons why we also do this in every year is apart from refreshing everybody's mind, the police commander leaves. Sometimes the DC is no longer the DC. Somebody else takes over. But we wanted to keep everybody in the loop and everybody alert as to exactly what has to be done in case there's an emergency. So last year, if some of you recall, around 23rd October, if I remember, we sent out an alert that there was a potential that we would spill. But in the event, we did not spill. That was very late in the rainy season. So it did not pan out. So we did not. But that set the stage for NADMO to begin to work out arrangements for a potential spill someday that we didn't know. So this year, we decided that instead of having this so-called desktop or workshop for all the actors in the EPP program, we decided that we would do what we call a proper simulation, where people individually and collectively will go through a process of simulating what you will do when it should happen. So we had everybody there. The fire service was there, the Ministry of Defense was there, the Ministry of Interior, everybody. We did a simulation. I think some of this we have circulated on the social media. Some of them were covered by GhIE FM, etc., etc. And we did an actual simulation. People who should move, who don't want to move, what do you do? Somebody gets injured whilst being moved to a safe haven, what do you do, etc. How do you sound the alarm? How do you what language should you use? Everything in terms of communication. So we did that as if we had a premonition that something was going to happen this year. And we did that in middle of May, 11th May if I remember. It was 11th May, yes, okay. So we did that. Then come June, that's when the rains started. And as Kabna said, rain started a little heavy. And then we started looking at our hydrographs to see what was panning out. Of course, when we do these things, we have our own models that we couple with the information that we get from other climate agencies. You know, the Sahel is close by, so there's a lot of interest in climate prediction, etc., especially seasonal climate prediction, especially around the rainy season. Akmet in Niamey, some of you may know. So we did that. We got all that, put together a forecast, and then made a decision on when to spill or when not to spill. But you can only, you see, you can only spill when you have sufficient information to decide. So come August, we had sufficient information to know that we would spill. These are all things that my colleague is going to talk about. I'm just giving a very 10,000-foot type of thing. So we made a decision to spill. So on August 23rd, if I quite remember, we wrote to NADMO and also GhIE that use as much, in the case of GhIE, use as much hydro as possible. It's just like creating a hole. And then NADMO, be in readiness, just in case we will spill. And so that advisory went out through the EPP platform. And I think that he will take you through the details, so I'll quickly summarize. So we decided that we'll start the spilling on the 15th of September. Before then, on the 12th of September, if I recall, we had sent out an advisory again. This time, not to the local communities, nationwide. We took adverts in the papers, we went on the radio stations, and announced that we were going to spill. So the spill started on the 15th. We set ourselves a certain target that 272.5 on the 15th. If it does happen, we will spill. So we made a decision to spill. It was exactly that level. So we made a decision to spill. But we knew that in spite of having told people move, we know that this is a very difficult thing for people to do. And we see it all the time on TV. Even when there's fire in the US, when you ask people to move, they still don't want to move. If there's a flood, hurricane coming, people really don't want to move. So we started in little bits. In 2010, we started at 50,000 cubic feet per second. Pardon my imperial, but as Kaiser engineers designed so everything is still in imperial units. In 1991, we started at 50,000. But this year, we made a decision that let's give them ample time. So we started at 20,000. Then after 5 days, we increased it 30,000. We increased it to 40,000, 50, 60. The whole idea being that at least even if you don't believe that we are spilling, you will see the water level coming up over time, and you will react accordingly. Everybody also knew where the safe havens were. They've always been part of the EPP protocol. So everybody knew that if this does happen, this is the refuge that you should move to. So we did that. So for 23 days, more or less, September 15th to October 9th, we continued to increase the levels of spillage bit by bit. But what we were doing was that now we're beginning to have a balance between what will happen downstream to people. The lake level was also going up, so what's going to do? So we're getting to a situation where the dam was beginning to be at risk, as opposed to the consequences of people not moving early enough. So we issued another advisory that because we still continue to have the rains, we are going to intensify. So people should move to higher ground. That was before we increased the spill substantially. And that's what we eventually found out. But because people knew that they had to move to the safe havens, it is very clear that there were no deaths, thankfully. So if there were no deaths, then something correct must have happened. Because can you imagine a flood wave, excuse my language, disabled people, old ladies, old men, children, nothing happened to anybody. Everybody moved to the safe haven or moved to higher ground, stayed with their relations, etc., or friends, but no deaths. The number of people involved, based on what NADMO tells us, the enumeration by NADMO is 39,000. So for that scale, 39,000 people, and to have no deaths, it tells you that something worked out well, and that there was sufficient caution that was taken. So, to summarize, there was a lot of planning that went into this, because I don't want to take up too much of the time that my colleague will take up. There was a lot of planning that went into it. There was a lot of coordination that went into it. That's why we had what we had. And that's why there's still no deaths as far as the spilling is concerned. But the most important is that how did we respond? NADMO ourselves. The spill occurred on the 10th, 11th, we were on site. We were at the haven, the safe havens. And we started with the relief efforts. Exactly one day after. We had relief, we gave out relief materials to 5 districts that had been impacted then. And so what happened that over time, NADMO did the enumeration, we expanded the scope of the relief items, etc., etc. And so as we speak today, we've come to the end of the spill. And I think that my colleagues would take us through why we came to the end of the spill. And we've come under a lot of criticism, so to speak. But I think that is because the story hasn't been properly told. So I'm sure when my colleague comes and tells the story of what the engineering decisions were, I think you get a better appreciation of what it is. But what I've done is just to give you a 10,000-foot view of exactly what we did, how we planned, how we coordinated, and what we did in order to ensure that no deaths have occurred. And I still stand by that. It is something that is, because really, as the president was saying, if you listen to, or if you read the reports on the Libyan disaster, the numbers keep on going up. Initially, it was 11,000. The last time I read, I think it was 25,000, with a large number of people missing. Yeah. So there's always a choice that the dam manager has to make between opening the spill gates at the right time and hesitating to do it. And I think those engineering decisions, that's exactly what my colleague is going to talk about. So thank you very much. I just thought I should give you this overview again. We'll be ready for the questions.
Okay, so we thank the Chief Executive of the Volta River Authority for this very edifying 10,000 feet view of the very, very unfortunate situation which has plagued several communities downstream. I gather there is a recognition of the extent of devastation, and you even put the numbers at 39,000, and also reference to the potential of what could have gone wrong if clear, decisive actions were not taken, and the reference to the unfortunate incident in Libya coming from Storm Daniel. That was also a unique thing, but has some similarities with the dam structure we have. They also had 2 dams in sequence, and due to the storm, the dams were overfilled and they broke. Obviously, the dams also had their own issues, but thank you very much. We understand VRA has 2 presentations to make. Is that the case? Or just 1? 2? Okay. So GhIE has received tons of questions. It is not up to 176 questions as put out in the political era, but from the last collation I have, there are about 30 questions. President mentioned a few of them, and our colleagues online and present here would be joining the discussion. So we'll give the floor for your presentation so that we can follow up with the questions that we need. As professionals in the industry, when things happen, people look up to us to give views or opinions on, and we should be able to speak about them based on the understanding that we have of the issue. So when you say you are a water resource engineer and there's a plumbing break in your house, the whole house turns to you, thinking that you must have done something water. So you should be able to solve the plumbing issue. And that is the crisis we find ourselves as professionals in the industry. So we will continue to speak from the commonsensical point of view nonetheless, but we would appreciate your edifying statements of the facts. Thank you very much. Please, you are welcome to make the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abdul Nuwahab, Manager, Generation and System Planning, Volta River Authority. I think with the remarks of my Chief Executive, my work is very easy. All I have to do is to show a little more graphs and pictures to demonstrate all the things that he said. So I'll start my presentation by helping us to have an overview of the VRA EPP framework. So in all this, how do we plan and how do we set out to manage our emergency preparedness when we have to spill or in the event that there's a dam break? How do you manage it? Then we'll look at this year, what actually happened, what informed the decisions that were made, and then the notifications that went out as my chief enumerated, and then put our spill in perspective. What happened this year? Put it in perspective so that we have a better appreciation of what has happened. Then we'll also do another presentation on the humanitarian efforts after the spill incident. So this is the VRA EPP framework. The EPP, the scope of the EPP is to specify the roles and responsibilities of the various stakeholders. And it looks at a situation where there's a spill or a possible dam break. What are the roles that the various actors are supposed to play? So that's what the EPP does. Some of the procedures and processes that we have to follow to identify an emergency phase classification, and then all that. So that is what the EPP is all about. The coverage of the EPP is this. So the EPP identifies the places that will be impacted and outlines all those places and the areas. And so it covers that scope as well. So when we are dealing with notifications, our focus is on the people who are likely to be impacted. So that is how come somebody will say, I'm not aware, but you may not be aware because you are not part of the people who are likely to be impacted in the event of a dam spillage. So the EPP talks about internally within VRA, what processes do we go through to classify various emergencies, and how do you do notification, and then all that. So the internal processes that we have to go through, that is also done. Then the emergency phase classification. We have phase 1 classification, where we are looking at when we are spilling up to 5,000 meter cube per second. That is the maximum. That is phase 1. So when we are spilling to the tune of a maximum of 5,000 meter cube per second, that is emergency phase 1. The classification also looks at a dam break. So it has classification. The A part looks at when you are suspecting a dam break, and you are doing a classification based on dam break. And then when you are looking at spilling certain volumes. So it looks at that. So in phase 1, we are looking at a potential dam break. You are suspecting that there will be a dam break. And the same phase 1, it has the B phase, which looks at you spilling up to certain volumes. So up to 5,000 meter cube. Then the phase 2, the interesting thing is a spill situation can easily lead into a dam break situation. So it looks at the two together. So in the phase 2, where you find yourself in spilling up to 10,000 meter cube per second, that is also potentially a dam break situation. So it looks at the two together. Then phase 3 is when you are spilling in excess of 10,000 meter cube per second. And that is also the phase 3 when the dam is actually broken. And in this exercise, we got to phase 2, emergency phase 2, and the spill ended. So this is the communication protocol as far as the EPP is concerned. So the EPP identifies all the actors. So at the national level, the National Security Council, the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Energy, that's the sector ministry, the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO. In the EPP, 3 regions are to be impacted in the event of spill or dam break. Eastern region, Greater Accra, and Volta. So the The regional coordinating councils of these 3 regions are supposed to be advised. Then at the district levels, the district chief executives of the impacted districts are also there. So that is the notification protocol that governs the EPP. So if you look at, in terms of the notification, the role that VRA has to play in the notification is clearly mapped out in the EPP. So the black arrow here shows the black arrow shows the notifications by VRA. So VRA is supposed to inform the Minister of Interior, the regional ministers, the district chief executives. So that is where VRA is supposed to work up to. Then the expectation is that from here, they also write to the local communities. So that is how the EPP framework is set up. So once you've gone through this process, then as far as the EPP requirement is concerned, you've gone through all the protocols that is required for managing any form of dam spill or dam break. So what are the tools that are used in the EPP? There's some lag between the screen and... So we have inundation maps. The inundation maps give a clear indication of whatever different levels of spill, the areas that are likely to be impacted. If there's a dam break, what are the areas that are going to be impacted? So all those inundation maps are there. We have a contact directory because, as Chief indicated, you have a situation where people in certain positions can be changed. So all the time, you need to have the right contact. It's not the time that there's an emergency, you are sending a message to the person and he tells you that I'm no longer in that district. I've now moved to Kumasi. Then you are now going. So all the time, you have to make sure that your database is up to date. Then we also have the lists of the communities and the places that are likely to be impacted for the different levels of spill. So these are the tools. And these tools are with all the districts. All the districts, when you go there, they have this. They have it in soft, they have it in hard. So the inundation maps have been printed, and they know it. We've had workshops with them, we've trained them, they know how to look at it and understand it. So that is what the situation is as far as the implementation tools. So this is a sample inundation map. This is a sample inundation map. So you have red dots that would indicate the areas that are likely to be inundated for the different levels of spill. This is just a sample, but then we have for all the different levels and for all the communities. The green dots will tell you the unaffected areas. So, and then the circled areas, there are circled areas there that will show you the safe havens. So when there's, we hear that people are at St. Kizito, it's because the inundation maps were looked at, and we knew that at St. Kizito is a safe place. When you are there, you are not going to be impacted. So that is what governs the EPP and then all that. So in terms of information that is supposed to be given out, even the information, we have templates, the kind of information, because it is not in the midst of an emergency. And the word emergency means time is not on your side. So it's not in that time that you are supposed to be thinking of the wedding. There's a template. Put in this, put in that, and then just send it out. So that is what governs the whole EPP, the potentially affected areas, all that. That list is available to all the districts, and that is what they work with. So these are just sample messages just to demonstrate that all these things are there, are templates that they work with. And since the EPP document was developed in 2010, since 2011, we've been holding workshops. So here you see the inundation map being used to do a training in one of the districts. And this is what we go through every year. The only year that the EPP wasn't undertaken was by executive instrument when we had COVID and we were not supposed to go out. Otherwise, all the years religiously, we've been implementing the EPP, having education workshops with all the districts without fail. So these are just pictures to demonstrate the EPP that we've been doing. And in May this year, we did the exercise down, so where we did a simulation, and then for the areas, we did the simulation for Mepe, Esujamai, and Ada. That was real simulation. And then we did a desktop, because those were the hotspots. So when you study, you realize that the impact is more there. So that is where we did a real simulation, and then we did a desktop simulation of all the other districts too. So this was just in May 2023, just to get everybody to understand and have even a better appreciation of what is required when there is an emergency. So this is the background. As far as our framework for managing an emergency situation is concerned. So we look at this year, and then I'll provide some information about Akosombo. Akosombo, the installed capacity, just for the benefit of those who are not aware, it's a 1,020 megawatt hydropower plant. The storage capacity is 150 billion meter cube. And to put that volume of water behind the dam in context, when you take all Ghanaians, assuming that the population of Ghanaians is 36 million, and now we are assuming that everybody is at middle income level, so our water consumption is high. We are using water to wash cars. We are using water to do so many other things. We have showers in all rooms, so we are consuming a lot of water. In a whole year, the whole country, we are going to use just 0.35% of the water behind Akosombo Dam. That is to help us have an appreciation of the volume of water that is behind the dam. So when you lose the dam, it can also give you an idea, when you lose the dam, the kind of impact that is going to give. So this is just to help us put it in context. It has 6 units, each of 170 megawatt capacity. Now, we want to put the decisions relating to spilling or not spilling in context. We should have started early. We should have waited. Why didn't you start in January? Why didn't you start? This is the hydrology of Akosombo. When you start from January, you virtually don't get any water coming in, because once the plant is running, whatever is coming in, so you will see when people look at our data, they say, how can you have negative inflows? Yes, because at that time, you are not getting anything. But when you get to July, by end of July, you would have had only 6% of the inflows. So only 6%, your idea of what you are likely to get, you have only realized 6%. And then by August, you would have realized a total of 27%. September, 69%, cumulatively. And then by October, we would have had 98%. So the remaining 2% comes in November. So if you look at the history of the spilling at Akosombo, most of the spills took place after August, because that is when you can have a clear picture of what to expect. Because if you are supposed to create a hole, for example, what hole is sufficient? Is it this high or this high? It's only when you have an idea of what is coming in, then it informs you of the hole you are supposed to create. So most of the decisions around spilling in Akosombo happens after August. That is when you have a clear picture of the situation. And when you are above the upper rule curve, we have a curve that guides our operations. The peak of the curve is elevation 276. That is your normal operating elevation. And then you have your surcharge elevation, your maximum surcharge elevation at 278. So this is the room that you have. So you can stay at 276, you are okay. But don't cross 278. But the issue is, once you get to elevation 278, what it means that you've lost control of the situation. Whatever comes in, if it is 500,000 cubic feet per second, you have to take it out, because you cannot stay at 278, above 278. Once you get there, you are compromising the integrity of the dam. So nobody wants to see elevation 278 at all. So you realize that with the rule curve, this is the rule curve. The rule curve is the dotted line. In 2011, we spilled in the year 2010. So in 2011, from January, we were above the upper rule curve. This is the upper with the dotted line. This is where we were. Still, this is where we ended up. Because at this time, when they got to around June, July, and then they looked at the situation, it was clear that the water that was expected didn't warrant the opening of the gates. So eventually, even though they were above the upper rule curve, eventually this is where they ended up, and there was no spilling in 2011. Otherwise, the thinking would have been, you are above the upper rule curve, you spilled in 2010, you're already above, why don't you spill again? Nothing happened in 2011. So the decisions governing spilling is always informed by your expectation of inflow. It's not the position where you are as far as the trajectory is concerned. So the question is, what is our planning process as far as predicting our inflows and then all that is concerned? Now, the inflow, as I indicated, starts from July. So you have the inflow forecast will estimate the volume of water that you are expecting into the dam. Once you have an idea of the volume of water that you are expecting into the dam, you'll be in a position to determine whether the dam has the capacity to contain that volume. If the dam is not in the capacity to contain that volume, you can estimate how much you have to take out and by what means, what volumes do you take out and when. It is done. This is what we've been doing for the past 60 years. If the dam cannot, then it means you have to think of spilling and then all that. So in terms of the forecasting model that we use, it uses flow data. It uses rainfall data from stations across the country. We have close collaboration with Ghana Meteorological Agency, and we work with them as far as giving us data on rainfall stations across our catchment is concerned. Because you want to have a longer idea, a more lead time, a better lead time as far as your influence, we use sea surface temperatures because they are more constant than the rainfall. So we use sea surface temperatures too in our forecasting. And then after we've done all that, we also monitor on a regular basis to see how well our forecast is comparing with actual and see how we have to make other decisions. So normally, most models will not give you 100% accuracy. So we normally have an upper confidence limit and a lower confidence limit, and then that is the band within which we work with. So that is an idea of what we go through as far as our forecasting is concerned. So what is the information that we got as far as forecasting is concerned? This is from Ghana Meteo. This was in the month of, they will give you this information, so in July, this is the forecast that we had. You know, one thing that we should also have in mind is that Meteo does forecast not just for hydropower, it's for the whole country. There are agric interests, there are other interests. So they will do the forecast. So the interpretation for a hydropower person will be different from an agric person. For us, if Meteo tells us that we are going to get normal rainfall, it means nothing serious is going to happen at Akosombo. So our catchment is in the northern part of the country. That's where we get most of the rainfall. And in this forecast, most of the rain was going to be concentrated in the lower part. And that place, it doesn't normally have a big impact on us. This is where the impact is. And this place says normal rainfall. So for us, normal means the situation is under control. Only a small portion. This should not create any alarm as far as we are concerned. Then, as I said, we monitor other agencies as well. So we monitor Climate Prediction Center. So Climate Prediction Center is based in the United States of America. They run more than 27 different models using the latest technology that you can think of. And what they do is that they try to test, to declare El Nino or La Nina. El Nino means you should expect a dry spell. And La Nina means you should expect a wet spell. Wet spell means you should expect more rains from our side. And dry spell. And we've assessed their data. We've seen that there's a big correlation between what they say and what we observe here. It has 85% correlation, what they say and what we observe. So when Climate Prediction Center tells you you should expect And in this July, what they said here is that you should expect a dry spell. This is what they said. And they said with a 90% certainty. So they were 90% sure that we shouldn't expect. And when Climate Prediction Center tells us that it is El Nino, it means you should get below average rainfall. Below average rainfall and where the dam was, it means you don't have anything to worry about. Then we checked with ACMAD. ACMAD also does, because our basin spreads outside Ghana, we share water with Burkina Faso, Mali, and all these countries. So we are also interested in what is happening there. And ACMAD forecast also says, this is what it said. This is Ghana. You see, Ghana is below normal. So here we shouldn't expect a lot of rain. The rain is a small portion of Burkina Faso. So if you realize Burkina Faso spread a lot this year. This is what they said, just here. So as at July, the situation, and then when we put all this information in our forecasting models, this is what our model told us. That this line, which is your best estimate, is taking you to elevation 274. This is your normal operating. So this is where, when you cross this elevation, then you know that. So, and if you look at this curve, tracking this curve, it's taking you to 274. And we're tracking it. This is the actual. This is the black. And this is our projection. At west, this is where we'll peak. At most, this is where we'll get. And this is what we expect based on what our model is telling us. So, as at July, that is in the month of July, the forecast was saying that the situation, there is no need to open the gates. Then we look at September forecast. So GMET will also update their forecast in August because they also look at the situation and keep changing. So in August, and it's the August information which you are going to use in your forecast for September. So in August, you see a complete change. That now all the whole country, right from our catchment area down south, we should expect above average rainfall. This is what tells us that we should expect a lot of rain. Climate Prediction Center, that has 85% correlation with what we observe, still maintain their position that we shouldn't expect a lot of rain. ACMAD, that's forecast for the region, still maintain their position. They didn't change. Only GMET changed. And when we put that information in our model, we realize that now the situation has also changed accordingly. We see that this one, our best estimate, is now getting to 276. And the 276 is okay. But then, this line here tells us that this is where you don't want to cross. You don't want to go above 278. And we were tracking at 277.5 because we don't want to get to 278. So you are working with 277.5 to create a certain buffer between that point and your level where you lose absolute control. And also because of consideration downstream. Because if you say that you are going to keep it at 276, the levels you spill is more than when you are keeping it at 277.5. So you are balancing the integrity of the dam and the impacts downstream. So that is what our model told us. So once we saw this line where we realized that it is slightly, it just shifted slightly, somewhere around 5th September, thereabout, onto this line. So it is 50-50. Immediately, we took the decision that we have to spill. So even though we saw it somewhere around by 7th of September, the decision has been made to spill, and then the notifications went out on the 8th, within a day. Okay. So that we could notify the people, give them the 1-week notice before we could open the gates. So the analysis of the 2023 inflows. So what happened was that if you look at, when we started, as Chief indicated, we started slowly. One, to let the people believe, because these are people who haven't seen spilling in a long time. So when you tell them you are spilling, and they have been trained that when you see the water level rising, start moving. They know. Yes, they know. So we started slowly building it up gradually, still within the phase 1 phase. And typically, this is how your October behaves. The September, we're okay, we're staying within the phase 1. That is where we're spilling. Then when we got to October, the increase in spill happened when we moved to phase 2. And if you look at this line, this is a long-term average. Normally, your September behaves this way. Your inflows will go up in the middle of, so when you slice September into 10 days, so this is first decade, second decade, so 10 days each, decade 1, decade 2, decade 3. October, you do the same, you slice it to 10 different days. You realize that in September, it will go up, come down. And normally, your first decade of October, second and third are lower than what happens in September. That's a normal trend. And then we also checked the last 10 years. Same trend. Slightly higher, but it goes down. But this is what happened this year. So at this point, this jump occurred. And in the years that you've seen this jump, where you see your October higher than your September, what you are likely to see here is between 50% and 98% of this figure. And this figure, this is an average. We're seeing over 400,000. This is an average of 300,000 CFS. The maximum that was taken out was 183,000 CFS. So if you see another 280,000 here, you can imagine what it means. So that is exactly what happened. And this is a picture of, at the time, where the reservoir level was. This is just the headroom that was there. These are the gates, and this is the water behind the dam. Just for us to appreciate what was happening at the dam as well. And any delays meant that this water is going to go over, and your dam will be compromised. So this is it. This is how we started spilling. This is what was coming in. This is how we spilled. We started slowly, went up towards the latter part of September when it was declining. Then we went up. Gradually, we got to 183. We stayed there for about 8 days and then came down gradually. And then we closed the gate October 30th. And one thing that we have to bear in mind is, at this point, when we looked at the options available to us, this is what eventually happened. This is the 277.5 line you don't want to cross and lose control over the situation. This is what eventually happened. And at that time, when we saw that jump, these were the options available. You either keep your spill levels at 120. This is where it's going to take you. You cross the 278. This is when you are looking back. But at the time, where we got around 40%, 45 to 50% of the October. Assuming we had 98, this figure would have been different. So here, 277.36 is where we ended. And all the other options was taking us above that. Above your benchmark. So the option you had is, look, take it out. At that same time, Adome Bridge was a constraint. Because Sogakope Bridge was a constraint because if you wait, you have to spill more in order to keep it here. And spilling more was going to compromise the Sogakope Bridge. So all these considerations were taking place. How do you balance all these things? We have the inundation maps. We have a fair idea that, look, there will be an impact. But we also had a team on the ground monitoring and giving us feedback. The people are moving. They are moving. So at least we know that when you take the water out, human lives will be saved. So that is exactly what went into the decisions. And if we hadn't spilled, we would have been at 280.86. If we had decided that we would not spill at all and close the gates, this is what was going to happen. Akosombo Dam, I think we'll be in the position to sit in this room to be having this discussion if that decision was not taken. And this is statistics on what we spilled, what came in, and then all that. So the notification process, I think, as I said, Chief also mentioned it. We wrote letters to GhIE in August. September decision was made. Notifications went out on the September 8th. September 11th, we had activated the EPP protocols. All the platforms for communication had been activated. We sent out a press alert on September 12th. September 15th, when the gate was open, we sent another press alert. When we noticed that the levels would go up, another press alert went out on October 9th. The day after the gate went up, we were at 183. By the following day, NADMO team, together with us, were there helping people with relief support and then all that. And then this is the process that we've gone through. Just to, put the spill in perspective. The impact is about, Chief mentioned 39,000. When we started, it was 300, it moved to 4,000. Now we've gotten to 39,000. So my figure is even old. I'm sure maybe tomorrow the figure will be different. But for now, we work with the Chief's figure. It's 39,000, not 35,000. And this is the level of impact. See how high the water level is. And let us just conceptualize it. Who will survive water to the level of the lintel or the roof if the water just shows up overnight? Nobody. And yet, in our case, there's no death. It tells us something. The people knew. We had informed them, they were aware, they have been trained, so they knew exactly what they had to do. And that is exactly what happened. This is just information on other dams. Here, this is India. Their dam failed within 10 minutes. When certain quantity of water came in and they didn't react in a good time, within 10 minutes, their dam was gone. And these are images of what happened. This is Libya. Libya, in that case, they are recording between 11,000 to 90,000 people, deaths, and then tens of thousands missing. That one too was a dam break. Their dam has a capacity of 0.0225 billion meter cube. Akosombo is 150 billion. It is just 0.015% of Akosombo. They have lost 11,000 to 90,000 people, tens of thousands missing. The reason is that they didn't open the gates. They said the engineers were not proactive enough to open the gates. Norway is a developed country. They use automation. So the gate is not operated by a human being. So the gate opened on its own. In their case, the gate failed to open. And in order to prevent that from happening, they knew that if the gates failed, with the water coming in, they can lose the dam. So they tried to bring in the military to come and do controlled blasting of the gates, just to let the water come out. The military couldn't get there in good time. They lost their dam. So you realize that balancing spilling decisions and dam break, they are like this. If you just delay a little and you don't take the decisive decision, you lose your dam. And when you lose your dam, it's not a situation of resettling people. It's towns, cities being washed away without trace. That is what we are talking about. So you balance the two and see how you can. And this is just to give dam spill impacts. Others spilled here, Bangladesh, killing more than 1,000. Northern Ghana, when Burkina Faso opened gates without notice, 48 people died. This is Nigeria, 39 people died. 80,000 people made homeless. They lost 39 people. October in the Philippines, same. So the point is, most spills ends up with deaths. With our APP and the coordination with all the other stakeholders, we've been able to manage this situation. Impacts, yes, but we've been able to save lives. And we think that that is what we set out to do. We know spill can come, but when spill comes, we want to make sure that lives are protected. And that is exactly what we're able to do. Thank you very much.
statutory organization, but we also know for a fact that you said you've committed about 20 million cedis towards relief efforts. So we would have to balance the time available for also enabling the airing of concerns that other professionals have, which they have expressed, so that you can perhaps clarify some of the views we have and make us have better informed understanding of the situation. And alongside that, we can still show the wonderful work you've done in the many communities alongside this, if you don't mind. Or would you rather you make the presentation before you go ahead? You make the presentation. It's in there? Okay. Oh, all right, then please go ahead.
Right. My name is Ken Arthur. I will just scale down from the technical and then go to show VRA's effort in joining, the government to bring relief to the affected persons. We've heard about our emergency preparedness plan protocol. So as per the protocol, anytime that a spill event is taking place, we maintain a group in the areas to monitor and observe whatever is going on. Therefore, from this point, we were able to observe closely and then react quickly to whatever situations that came up. The EPP spells out that we have other players. In fact, the relief effort is led by NADMO. But VRA, per the protocol, would always send people to the ground, and then if there are any observations, they would quickly trigger what is required in the various phases of the EPP for the main actors and other relief agencies to come in there. So that is about the, am I controlling from here? Technology. Can I thought I was changing it here. I'll change it here. Oh, okay. Oh, there's a lag. Okay. So we're talking about the emergency deployment. We've heard about the stages that we went through until it became very necessary and unavoidable to discharge at the phase 2 spill rates. So immediately, and per the protocols of the EPP, we had to bring in NADMO and other relief agencies, to attend to whichever situation that was panning out. So there was an emergency deployment. As you can see, we joined the service commanders to the grounds to find out or to carry out a rapid assessment of the situation down there, together with NADMO, and planned immediately how we were going to react to bring relief to the affected persons. So the relief agencies comprised of NADMO, of course, they were in the lead. We had the various municipal and district assemblies involved, Ghana National Fire Service, Ghana Police, Army, and then the Ghana Navy. You can see from the pictures that we had the 48 engineers from the Ghana Army deploying some boats over there. And then also at the far corner there, you see the NADMO Director General, also leading the efforts with VRA as part of it. VRA had to spark the efforts because we had people on the ground monitoring the situation. And as I said earlier, it's part of the EPP. So anytime, there was going to be an adjustment by the EPP protocols, we had to communicate to the various actors and then ensure that they move into action. So there were several things that were carried out. VRA supported NADMO to send relief items. In fact, the impacted communities, as we counted, the potential impacted communities were 9. But then the effect were felt in 8 districts. We're talking about North Tong, Central Tong, and South Tong. Of course, it's a German very close to the dam, Shai Osudoku, talking about Suchari,
Anloga, Keta Municipality, Ketu South, and Adan East, by extension, were all considered as part of the potential impacted communities. And therefore, we had people there to monitor the conditions. And as you can see from the pictures, we took truckloads of food and non-food items to the displaced persons who were hosted in the safe havens. The safe havens that had already been identified by the EPP protocols. Of course, some of the affected victims also moved in with family and friends, and all these people were captured, and we made sure that the relief items, got to that extent. VRA continued to also engage widely together with NADMO, the traditional leaders. So in the town of Mepe, which was worst hit, we had to meet with the Manklalo and his elders. Then again, we had to make sure that all parties were involved in the distribution effort. So we had to talk through to the district assemblies and the traditional councils to form a larger group, an all-inclusive group, including political leaders, so that every affected persons, would be reached, so that the narrative is not skewed. So whatever, was done, we made sure, at least from VRA's end, to bring all the parties together. Whilst we provided the support, we also made sure that some technicalities, were worked into the relief effort. You can see some of the donations that we made at Central Town. So these are pictures to show what went on. Some of the presentations that we made at Central Town, to North Town, Aroga, and all those other places. Apart from the food and non-food items, VRA also supplied medical items, especially targeting possible outbreak of waterborne diseases because of the floods. But we didn't limit it to only that. In fact, mobile clinics were set up at all the locations, and they treated all manner of, ailments, from the normal ones, to whichever. We didn't leave out the kids. Of course, their school programs were disrupted. In some of the areas, they formed makeshift schools so that they could continue with the academic program. In other areas, they were distributed over the existing schools. So we tried, all in our capacity to make sure that at least we brought some normalcy to the affected persons. Now, VRA adopted an all-hands-on-deck approach. So all the management staff were distributed to the impacted areas for also observation. So when we got to the phase 2 and we triggered the EPP protocols, we went beyond the original group that were on the ground and monitoring. So all the management staff had to take various positions within the various impacted communities so that they could observe and bring solutions in real time. Some of the things that we did. With the floods, all the water in those affected areas were contaminated, polluted. Some, the water intake pumps were completely flooded. So in Aveimbe, for example, VRA had to come in quickly to relocate their water treatment pumps to higher grounds so that we restored water almost immediately that it went to. We deployed water tankers to bring in potable water to the safe havens as well as the communities. In Mepe, where we had the largest number in one particular safe haven, that's in Kizito, VRA installed a potable water treatment system. And you can see from the tanks there where we filled it with the potable water treatment potable water for the use of those in the safe haven as well as other people from other communities. This slide also talks about the water, so it's the same thing. It's one of the things that we had to pay particular attention to avoid the outbreak of any waterborne diseases. The next slide shows the presentation of the medical items that we sent to the various communities. Then again, VRA worked closely with the Ghana Health Services to make sure that we reach out with the kind of medications that were needed over there. I think this picture shows the visit of His Excellency the President, who also came to the impacted areas to have a first-hand view of what is happening, following the setup of the interministerial committee. In terms of still health and sanitation, we provided mobile toilets for all those facilities. Yes, the safe havens were determined from the EPP outreach, and these were higher grounds that would not be flooded, in case of those. But then, of course, we needed to put some of the facilities there to make it, okay for people to live there. So we had to quickly deploy mobile toilets, other sanitation things like dustbins, etc., together with the medical outreach, at least to make things simple for them. We also distributed solar lamps to all the affected persons in the holding places, especially where there were no lights, etc. You can see in our picture, our chief executive himself visiting one of the communities. I think this is Mepe, the West Heat place. He went there more than 3 times to interact with the people, find out exactly their needs, and that informed us of the kind of relief items that were needed, to go there. In Mepe, at a point in time, the water covered the road that led to one of the safe havens. So you can imagine, you had to ride on a canoe to that place. Quickly, VRA had to come in and create an access route to the St. Kizito safe haven, such that we reduce the risk of crossing, that river or pond, which led to St. Kizito. This talks about also the water and then the kind of organization. Indeed, at the end of the day, as I said earlier, we made sure that all the parties came together and, made sure they distributed the relief items equitably across all the needed persons. And whilst we found ourselves in the lower Volta, we assisted with the opening of the Keta Lagoon floodgates. In fact, the Keta Lagoon experienced high levels as far back as June due to the rainfall and all that. So you could see that other climatic conditions, aggravated this situation. Everybody talks about spills, but, the Keta Lagoon got to its high level somewhere in June, and there was, no point of draining. The flood control gates were constructed as part of the sea defense project, but since then it had not been utilized. So VRA engineers went there to assess the situation and managed to open the gates for the water to flow. This picture that we're seeing here, it was even at high tide. In fact, it's a video, but I think it's a little bit sticky here. Even at high tides, we had the lagoon draining into the ocean. And we've had positive feedback that floods in Anyako, Keta, and other areas are receding due to some of these interventions that we have given. So, in brief, these are part of the many things that VRA helped, NADMO and other relief agencies to bring at least or cushion the hardship of those affected persons. As Chief said, our slogan is that we will never leave them alone. We'll make sure we continue with this relief effort until their livelihoods are restored back to normal. Thank you very much.
So I've given a premise. So before this, the original intent was that I would present the questions here, maybe allow for the audience here also to ask a question, if possible, at the same heading, and perhaps also go to those online to ask a question. But given the time constraint, we'll see how to navigate it. Is there a particular person from VRA who responds to the question so we'll know how to pass around the mic? Would you want to decide? Engineer Wahab, you are in the hot seat. So would you want to, should I give you a seat close to me? We'll do a quick one-on-one. Okay. I've been signaled from the rear that the sheet will be passed around with the scan codes on them. Let's scan and register our attendance. It is important in safety management. So you heard Engineer Kenzo say that they had to do a head count. We need to know the people here. Kenata, sorry. My apologies. Engineer Kenata say that head counts are important. So please, you can pass it around now. So the first question borders on the dam design and safety. What is the design life of the dam? And does the VRA currently have any guideline in place for decommissioning the dam safely when the design life is attained? I believe it is born out of the fear that one day we will wake up and will not be awake again. Okay, you share the podium with me. No, you went. Oh, there's more. Like I said, 30 questions.
Okay. Normally for large infrastructure,
politics. Well, if I heard the presentation of the chief executive and Engineer Wahab and even the social impact of the work they have done, I was so amazed. But the only thing that I want the VRA to do, I listened to one of your top engineers on Peace FM. Although he came across as presenting the issues very well, but some of the impactful things that you have done, as in the level where you couldn't wait to spill and those things, I didn't see him come out so clearly on those matters. I mean, because if he had said those things, maybe ours might have been put at rest. So what I will pray is that next time we get opportunity, please go out there and let people know that we are not just sitting down as dams. Because even in Norway, you said Norway and Finland or whatever, if their dams are filled and we have been able to save not only the dam but lives, then thumbs up to be here. But I'm getting this opportunity, but I have to go away.
Thank you very much. Please clap much more. Yes, Mr. President. Yes, you have to ask me.
Well, thank you very much. Again, of course, I had a number of questions which were rhetorical, but then I believe that you have answered a number of them. But what was the impact of the sea level to the effect of the spillage? Because one would have expected, a layman would have expected that all these waters are getting into the sea. So is it that the sea level came up and prevented the water from getting in there? What really happened?
Places that we had high tides. There were places that we had high tides, and that also affected the movement of the water. So we realized that the high tides will coincide with the volumes that are coming, and it also affected the level of inundation that was experienced. So yes, it had an impact. Yes, sir.
Some communities were also flooded because of the high tides
Before even the spill gates were opened, yes.
So we have President-elect.
This question is from GhIE. He said when I come here, I should ask this question. That the rain falls, but the water doesn't get to Akosombo at once. It falls from a far place and it walks to Akosombo. So why is it that saying that from 9 to 11, you have to move from 90 cubic meters to 180, double, in such a way. Is there anything in terms of our prediction of the inflows that has to improve so that we don't have to take decisions within 2 days to move from 90 spillage to 180 level? Because I think the key thing is the inflows, managing the inflows. And if we knew that we were going to get that much water, we could have probably started that differently. So is there anything within the prediction system in terms of the inflows that must improve into the future, trying to improve our ability to do this better?
Okay, so thank you very much, Engineer Eze. So Engineer Eze has skipped us into the second stage questions, which was our prediction.
Thank you very much. I feel obliged to answer this question because it came from an old friend of mine at Tech, Kwekwe. Between me, Kwekwe, and Hesse, they taught me how to speak Ghana. So he's an old friend of ours. No, the jump from, let's say, call it 90,000 to 180,000 was not as a result of the prediction. It wasn't a prediction failure. I told you that when we started, we slowly built up the spill just to get people to move. But whilst we were doing that over the 23 days or so, the lake level was also rising. So it wasn't a question of predicting how much. It's because as the lake rose and you delayed in opening the spillway gates, we were only postponing the inevitable till another day. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you have a certain level of flow that you have to discharge as part of the spill. And so the longer you stay, just like they did in Olympia, the longer you stay, the bigger the spill that you will have to. But it got to a certain point where we thought we couldn't wait any longer. And he actually said in his presentation that the Sugakope Bridge was also one big consideration. For those in the highway space, we don't know about the Sugakope Bridge. At 180,000 CFS, I went there the day after the spill. The clearance between the deck and where the water level was like 70 centimeters. Just this. And we had floating debris and all that, floating weeds all passing by. And they were impeding the flow of water between the piers. Couldn't. You understand? That was a major consideration. If we had waited 2-3 days, and he will show you the graphs. I think he did, but maybe you didn't catch it. 2 or 3 days. We'd have had to do 220,000 cubic feet per second. And that would have been more disastrous than this. So sometimes to make that decisive decision, you have to. You have no other choice but to do it. So it wasn't a prediction of more flows having come in. We know the travel time. Okay.
And your spillage, actually, in the early part of October, started going down. You went to about 80 or something or 70, and then it came down for about 2 or 3 days before we started. So why would that happen? That's part of what.
But that's how the spill program is. You try to mimic the hydrograph as you go along because you don't want to make mistakes. So if you had superimposed the hydrograph, you would have seen the hydrograph and the spill. I think you try to do something like that. You saw the hydrograph, yes. But that's what has to be done. That's the choice you make as a dam manager. See? Because what are you trying to do? Excess water that you want to. So you follow the hydrograph. And then as more comes, you have to discharge more with a prediction of what is going to come in. And we had that in hand. So it wasn't really a prediction issue. It was more of a question of the time it took for us to build up. That's all that happened. Yeah.
Mr. Chief Executive, when you say it wasn't a prediction issue, all the explanations, presentations made will make it seem that the forecast reliability, which would inform prediction, was a factor. So we made reference to GhIE's prediction forecast, which says that, oh, don't worry, the rain normally
That was in July.
in
That was in
northeast,
July.
In northeast,
Yeah.
you could have above normal. When you check with the climate, is it Resource or Research Center?
Prediction Center.
Prediction, right, good. So again, prediction. When you check from the Climate Prediction Center, which you say is more reliable, it's based in the US, which is advanced technology and all of things that come with it, they said, no worries, I know there's going to be drought. You check with those in the Niger, Sahel, they call it. They also said, no worry. Then in some part of the presentation, you say again that it would be much later that GMET will say, oh no, rather that the rain, the amount of water you receive, which really has any impact, comes from the top. And whilst GMET may have told you it's coming from the top, we took it for granted for most of us. So it would seem in some part of the presentation that we suspected it would happen, but we wanted to give room for it not to happen. Because one of the presentations made by Engineer Canada on another forum, he explained that in 2022, we forecasted, we had similar forecast, we were going to spill, we even published it, I checked, and we didn't spill. So, were you gauging something? If so, did your prediction not work?
No, that really, maybe you did not understand exactly what happened. Maybe you can pop up the where is it? Maybe you can pop it up. And then. Yes.
I have a question as you look for the picture.
Okay.
Looking at the entire corridor of the river, downstream, upstream, don't you think it's time to make recommendations on habitation? A method cannot forever be in the news, all right? Neither can Bato also forever be in the news. I think some recommendations have to be made. And I don't think this phenomenon is going to end today or tomorrow. Last week, I was in Karachi, and there's considerable damage there because of the expansion of the area. That one, the politicians are not talking, so no one is talking about it. So please, can there be a recommendation? Thank you.
I think there are a lot of lessons learned, but let me address the issue of Karachi. Karachi is upstream. Yes, so it's not any different from not GhIE. It's not any different from what's happening in Buipe. So that's upstream of the lake. The lake level is very high. The last time we got to this level was in 2010 when we did the last spill. So it's been there before. I think that didn't make news at that time because there wasn't an associated spilling with it that caused this. So I agree with you that it's an issue anytime the levels go up. But in the particular case of Lower Volta, I think there are lessons that have been learned. And I believe that one of the things that will come out of everything that has happened is exactly what you are talking about. So let's go beyond the relief efforts. Let's go beyond what the livelihood things are. A lot of people have brought up issues of, should we resettle everybody? But listen, that floodplain, and maybe let me put it in a way that we'll all understand, between Akuse, or Pong, the second dam, and Adan, 60, 70 kilometers. Do you know the gradient, the difference in height? 3 meters. 3 meters over 60 to 7 kilometers. It's a complete flat plain. Okay. So I agree with what Mr. Jima is saying, that now that this has happened, there has to be, and I think that's one of the things that interministerial group is ministers, that group is talking about. But once we are, I'm here before he answers the questions. I think that in terms of dam safety, right from the inception of VRA as an authority, every 5 years, we do exactly what he said. There's an expert group that comes, reviews the dam, looks at all our seepage points, slope stability, settlement of the crest of the dam. We put everything in total. We take daily records. They review it every 5 years. And they give us a clean bill of health. The only time they did not come here fiscally was during the COVID period because nobody could travel. But this year they've been here. When did they issue the report? I think it was first half of the year. When was it? First half of the year. And they gave us another clean bill of health. It is a standard practice for us. It's part of our DNA to ensure that the dam is always stable, that we will not take any compromises with the dam. We live with it. It's part of us. The other thing that I will also say is that when you popped out the picture showing where elevation 278 is and where we actually got to 277 points, maybe you didn't take a good look at it. This is what it was. Okay. So these are decisive decisions that we had to make. Painful as they are, we had to make those decisions. Okay. All right.
Reassurance. We go on with the questions that have already been presented. So we've covered the A part of the question, which was on dam design and safety. We've come to look at questions about prediction, monitoring of spillage. I haven't asked the questions that are presented here, but I'll skip on to water management and storage. And this is where the 7-year-old was concerned. The 7-year-old from the question suggests that couldn't all engineers just go and top up the dams?